Hey, how you doing? So welcome to this week's One Image My Edit. And this week I'm going to be showing you how to create a really creative and moody street edit within Lightroom. So this has been inspired really just from looking at pictures. I just want to try and bring out the very raw, edgy look that street photography can have. And you can see with this edit, it's all about stripping out all the a lot of the primary colors and then just leaving certain ones there just to sit and give it a little bit more impact. You can see on here we're taking out the blues, and it's almost a color pop. It's not a color pop, but it's almost there, and I think it's really nice. It just adds a little bit more drama to your shots. So that's what we're going to do this week. I'm going to show you how to do it, and of course you can always edit this to your own personal liking as well. So I'm going to hit the reset button and walk you through the process. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to add some contrast to this, and again, depending on your image would depend on how much you're going to push this. I usually start around plus 45 when I know that I'm going to be doing a very high contrast image. So because of that, I want to bring the highlights down. So I'm going to bring them down to, again, around minus 50, around there. I could probably go a little bit more on this. 56, 57 works pretty well, just looking at some of the highlights that are in this particular shot. Same with the shadows. I'm going to bring detail out the shadows, so I'm going to push them up. Again, 50, 60 is a good starting point. I would say around 60, 62 on this particular image. It just brings that detail back, so we're not losing any details and we're just not making it a muddy picture. Going to bring the whites down, so I'm going to bring these down to around minus 30, around there. That's a good starting point. Again, you can tweak it a couple of stops either way depending on your image. Same with the black. I'm going to bring this right down to about minus 50 on this one, just to darken some of the black areas there, but pump some black back in. Now I want to make this a little bit edgy, so I'm going to actually play around with the texture, clarity and the dehaze. Usually I wouldn't do this, especially for portraits of people, because it can make them look a little bit older than what they are, but because I'm going for that look, I'm quite happy to kind of push this up to around plus 30, plus 29. Again, depending on who you've got in your picture will determine if that ages them really nicely or not. So push some clarity in there as well. So not as much, around 10, 11 is quite good. Now the dehaze, we can push this up, and again, what this is going to give us is that raw kind of look. If I bring this back down, you can see what that's doing. It's just bringing that light back in. If we go the other way and really go for it, so about 50, 52, 54, that's quite nice. Again, it's just adding that rugged kind of street vibe look to the shot. So let's move on to the vibrance and saturation. I think I'll just bring the vibrance down to around minus 20. Saturation I'm not too worried about at the minute. We could come back to that if we need to. We can address that with the colors later on. I'm going to jump up to here now, the color temperatures. I'm just going to increase that a little bit. I just want to add some warmth back into the shot. So about plus 15. Bring the tint down to around minus 5, minus 6, 7, around there. That looks good. Okay. So yeah, that's looking good. That's looking all right. So let's move on to the tone curve. And what we're going to do on this, just make some initial points. One there, one there. And then I'm going to bring these blacks up because I want to matte the blacks off quite a bit. It's around there. And then these blacks, I'm just going to move this up a little bit to around there. You can see where this histogram line is. I'm just moving it up to there. So it's about there. That's good. And then just bring these down a little bit to around there. So we've got kind of quite a steep line there from the whites, and then the greys, and then into the blacks. So yeah, that's quite nice. And if we look at what that's done, you can see it's done quite a bit. It's just helped mute everything down a little bit and just take that kind of sting out of the texture and clarity and dehaze that we just done. So that's a kind of a counterbalance for it. So we're still getting the look, but it's not as severe, okay? Well, let's move on to the colours end, because this is where a majority of the work is going to be. So the hues, let's look at the oranges. So I'm going to bring them down to around -10, 11, 13, around there. Again, it really depends on your picture. The yellow, we're going to bring that down a little bit more to around -60, around there. That's good. And then the greens, I'm actually going to pump some greens back in up to around -55, I'd say. That's looking around back there, that's good. And then aqua, let's take some aqua out. I think I went to around -55 on this. Yeah, that looks good. Around there, that's right. Blue, just going to take a little bit out, around -20. I think that's good enough. So we've got some blues there, and I'm looking at this area here as well. And then purple, I'm going to completely take purple out of the shot just to really, yeah, pull them colours out. That looks good. Right, let's move on to the saturation then. So the saturation, reds, I'm going to bring them down to around -26, 27. Orange, -15, so not as severe. Yellow's a little bit more severe. Around 64, 65, around there. The greens, I'm going to bring them down. So even though we've put the hues up, we're bringing the saturation down a little bit. Blues, let's jump down quite a bit because there's a lot of blue in there. And now I did initially go to around 92, something like that. I could, on this particular image, bring it further down, and you'll see the difference. It wouldn't be as severe as the original edit which I showed you. So this is where you could do, again, depending on the colours in your pictures, will really vary. So if your picture has more green in it, then you may want to, you know, push that green back in it, or take more out. Again, entirely up to you. But this is just because there's a lot of blue in this. That's why I've gone so severe on this. Okay. And the purple, we can completely bring that out because we've done that on the hue anyway. So yeah, that's looking okay. And the luminance, again, you can, depending on your image. So if you look at the red there, you can see what that's happening. There's only a few bits in there, but I think it's important that we just go through each colour and just see what looks good. So about -10. Some of the orange you can see there. I just want to deepen that a little bit, so it's a little bit more, yeah, so it's not as bright. And you can see some of the yellows, we can bring that down a little bit, and you could literally just go through these, work them out. You can see there's green in there, so again, I'd always lean on the side of just bringing that brightness down a little bit. So there's a lot of blue in this shot, so yeah, bring that down. Some of the purple, I mean, I took all the purple out anyway. Magenta, yeah, and leave that where it is because it's affecting the lips and stuff on there. Okay, so that's looking good. Let's have a look at the colours then. The before and after the colours, you can see what we've done, stripping that colour out. And again, like I said, you can come back to these and you can adjust them however you like. Obviously, you don't have to stick exactly to this. We could add a little bit of blue back in there, and you can see what that does. That just gives you, yeah, a little bit of a nod of a blue rather than it completely going, which probably works better. So let's go into the colour grading then. I'm just going to concentrate on the highlights and the shadows. I'm going to keep it really, really simple. So the shadows, I'm going to go with a hue of around 180, I would say. That's usually, if you've watched the videos before, I really like that 180, 181 look, that aqua look. I really like that. I think it works really, really well. So choose at 180, and I am going to put just a saturation of around between 3 and 5. So you can just type that in, 3 or 5 there. I think 5 looks quite good. So you can type it in there, or you can just move this up and down, and that will then change the numbers for you. Okay, so let's go to the highlights. Highlights, I reckon near enough the same. So I'm kind of splitting that near enough the same. So 185 is quite nice. So we're kind of going up a little bit out of that spectrum. I'm going to add a little bit more in this, so about 16. So let's move that up to about 16, 17. That would do. So we're at 189. I think around, yeah, 86, 87. That's quite nice. So we're actually pumping a very similar colour in the shadows and the highlights, and that's just so it gives us a whole of a wash of a similar colour, and that kind of binds the image together. So again, that looks pretty good. So we can also change the blending and the balance as well. So we could bring the balance down a little bit, 34, 35. That's quite nice. That just balances it in more than one direction. So if you look at the before and after on that, you'll see what's happened. It's taken away a lot of that orange out of the skin tones a little bit as well. It's quite nice. See there, yeah, it just gives it a bit of a wash of colour. And again, you can increase the saturation, change the hue, whatever works best for you. Okay, I think we could add a little bit of sharpening to this. Let's just put enough, so around, I reckon about 40. Radius on 1 pixel. Detail, push it up to 50. So we're telling Lightroom we still want to keep detail, and we can push the masking up if you hold Alt or Option key down. You can push that up, and that's just going to sharpen the edges rather than the whole entire picture. So that works really, really well. And then always a good idea to add a little bit of noise reduction whenever you're doing stuff like this, just because we are really messing around with the colors in this. So I think plus 20 is good, and I think color we could probably go to around 15, 16, 17, around there. That's quite good. That works well. Yeah, that's good. I think that works really, really well because we're not over sharpening it either. We're really not. We're not pushing it to the extreme where it just looks like it's ultra sharp. We're kind of doing that with the clarity, and not that that's a sharpening tool, but it has a similar effect, and especially with the colors as well. We are kind of using colors to make it pop a little bit. Okay, we could add a little bit of a vignette to this as well. That can look quite nice. So bring that around to around -10. That looks quite good. We'll change this midpoint a little bit, 43, 44. That looks quite good. And it's just a little nod into that. You can see it doesn't do a massive deal, but it's a little bit just to give it a little bit of a darker area. So that is it. That's the look. So if we press the Y key, you can see there we've got before and after. It looks quite good, doesn't it? Now we can come back, obviously, back to the tone curve here. We could always matte this white as well. That would give it, again, a little bit more of a film look, so to speak. We could also bring the saturation down if we wanted to. We could, again, play with that vibrance. And I think it's just a case of getting it so we're happy with the skin tones. And again, jumping back to any of the colours, when we look at the hues and the saturations here, we can always, if we wanted to, pump a little bit of blue back in there. That's probably better for this particular shot, and maybe bring the greens back as well. That's going to give us a nice, and bring the yellows out. That's going to give us a nice look as well. So you can see there that it does give you that real nice street look that I'm after. Real grungy, real edgy. But yeah, I think that works really, really well. So you can see for yourself there. If we put it on full screen, that's the final edit there. So yeah, I think it looks good. So I hope you've enjoyed that. Like I said, you know, use this as a starting point, because of presets or however I edit is just a starting point. Do take in consideration your image, the colors that's in your image, but this is a great starting point. It doesn't have to be used on street photography. You could use this for any type of photography. It's going to give you a very specific look. If you want to take this a step further, then you could think about adding some grain. That's always a good idea. If you want to add a little bit of grain just to give it an analog feel, that can look quite nice and just help, again, bind the image together. that would be a good idea as well. So I hope you've enjoyed that, and I will see you all on the next one. Take care. Bye bye.